Let me keep going. Who is Israel? So I know there's a big conversation going around about Hebrew Israelites and all of that, and I want to dive into it now because this is a chapter of understanding in my spiritual journey. We talked about living. We talked about the church. What is the church? We talked about what is ministry. And then now we're going to talk about, well, who is Israel? While the term Christian is in the Bible, here are three areas, and this is when it comes to the King James Version, this is the only three places that Christian is in the Bible. Acts 11:26, and when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people. And the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. Then Acts 26:28. Then Agrippa said unto Paul, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. And then 1 Peter 4:16. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God on this behalf. All right, let me keep going. While the term Christian is in the Bible, the term Christianity is not. The history of the formalized religion of Christianity owes most of its tenets and rituals to Catholicism, not the Bible. All right, I'm sure that I lost you there. Let me say this. I'm gonna keep going. Hopefully it begins to make sense, but let's just demystify this. Christian is mentioned 3 times in the Bible, 2 times in Acts, 1 time by Peter, 3 times. But the term disciple, follower, those kinds of sons, these kinds of terms are mentioned far more than 3 times. Jesus didn't call anybody Christian. So I want to get that straight. And this is where this term Israel starts to make more sense. While you can use the term Christian, because Christian means follower of Christ or to be Christ-like. So you can use the term Christian. It's permissible. It's, like you see, it's mentioned 3 times in the Bible. But understand that the term Christian gets conflated to Christianity. Just like the term church is redefined to mean different things, the term Christian or gets redefined to mean all kinds of different things as well. And Christianity gets redefined to mean all kinds of different things. So boilerplate, the term Christianity is a religion of people who believe in Jesus Christ. The practice of believing in Jesus Christ is supposed to be the term Christianity. But the thing is that that's really not what Christianity is. Christianity is an entire governance or government and tradition that has nothing to do with the man who is called the Christ. It is kind of like the term patriot and then Patriot Act in politics or in the government. So we know the term patriot is somebody that is like a stalwart or a nationalist or somebody who is a supporter of their government is a patriot. But the Patriot Act uses the term patriot, but really has very little to do with that term of supporting the country. The Patriot Act is about spying and reading through your digital activity, email, phones, that kind of stuff. With the internet, tracking your online activity, that's the Patriot Act. Now, where is that in the definition of the term patriot? It's not. It's not. And in the same manner, the term Christianity has very little to do with the nature of Christ. So let me keep going. It is very much a religion and tradition that upholds man and upholds careers for people. So let me keep going. The term Catholic is Greek, which means universal or whole, and is accredited to have been originated by a man named Ignatius in 107 AD. Ignatius reinterpreted the definition of church from a spiritual body of believers, chiefly composed of the house of Israel, to an institution governed by bishops and priests. And so let me just say this. Oh, and also Ignatius professionalized ministry. So this whole house of Israel, look, house means family. That's what house means. House means family. So family of Israel. Who is Israel? Israel is a man by the name of Jacob or Yaqub. Yaqub is the grandson to a man by the name of Abraham. You have Abraham, who had two wives. One wife, actually, he had two wives, and then he had a air quotes baby mama. So he had two wives and a concubine. He had Sarah, who was his wife. Then he also had Hagar, who was his concubine, and was his wife's maidservant for a period of time. And then after Sarah died, he had another wife by the name of Keturah. Anyway, through the relationship between Abraham or Avraham and Sarah, they gave birth to a child by the name of Isaac. By the way, the birth of the relationship between Abraham and Hagar gave birth to Ishmael. Ishmael is 12 years older than Isaac. So now, talking about Abraham and Sarah, they gave birth to a child by the name of Isaac. Isaac grew up, and Isaac took a wife by the name of Rebekah, who was a distant cousin, by the way. Nevertheless, Isaac and Rebekah had two children. They had twins. And their names were Jacob or Yaqub and Esau or Edom. So Jacob and Esau. And Jacob, when he grew up, his name was changed to Israel. That's what occurred. So Israel, or Jacob, he had two wives, and he also had two concubines. So that as four women that he had impregnated throughout a period of time. And through those four women, he had 12 sons and a daughter. So he had 13 children that's documented, 12 sons and a daughter. He had, I can get into the details of the sons, but that's just like waxing, like, oh, I know the names of the children. But basically, Isaac, and he had Rachel as a wife, Leah as a wife, and then Zilpah as a concubine, and Bilhah as a concubine. And Rachel was the one that the woman that he actually wanted, but in order to get Rachel, he had to first marry Leah. So it was a whole deal that he had to do with, again, extended cousins. But anyway, it was through them that he gave birth to 13 children. The daughter's name is Dinah, Dinah. But the descendants of those children are referred to as Israelites, right? So now here's the thing. Of the tribes, because the tribes are named after the sons, not the daughter. The tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel. One of those tribes is called Judah or Yahudah. And Judah, then, like, those 12 tribes, as time progressed, they intermarried, they warred, they some of those tribes blended in with other groups. They joined together, split apart. Some of them disappeared, that kind of thing. And what essentially remained, for the most part, with some variance, is Judah's labeling. So you'll hear a term, again, Israelite, and it gets conflated a lot of times with Jew. But you have to consider that Jew, or which means son of Judah, technically speaking, is a one of 12 tribes. But in the scriptures, after a period of time, it tends to get conflated. And so on one hand, you might hear a term referred to as the Jews or Jew, but then in another sentence, you might see it says Israel. Is for the most part referring to the same group of people. So I just wanted to be clear about that. So when it says how, what do we have here? When it says Ignatius reinterpreted the definition of church. Hold on, I need that to come in. Okay. All right, there we go. Let's see. Ignatius reinterpreted the definition of church from a spiritual body of believers, chiefly composed of the house of Israel, to an institution governed by bishops and priests. Okay, so understand that the Messiah came out of the house of Israel. Therefore, for the most part, and this is why I say chiefly, therefore the church or the believers in Christ were primarily of Israel, because he came out of Israel. So his ministry was primarily for the house of Israel, which starts to further contextualize the previous statement when we go back up in Matthew 15, 23 through 25, where he's talking about going only to the house of Israel. That was his ministry, but that doesn't the task of salvation does not stop there. So let me keep going. Because hopefully that'll begin to make sense in a few minutes. All right. So Ignatius, right? Ignatius, I think he was Greek. Ignatius, or whatever Greeks were called back then. Ignatius professionalized ministry. He also advocated for the Sabbath or the Shabbat to be moved from Saturday to Sunday, and also forbade Christians from baptizing or even having communion or what was referred to as love feasts without the bishop. More info of Ignatius's ordinances can be found here. So he was the one, Ignatius was the guy that started to institutionalize the practice of believing in Christ and that expression. He came in and he started to set precedents for there being this divide between professionals and then everyday people who say that they believe. So like he helped to advocate multiple classes of believer, so to speak. Unfortunately, let me get this light going. It's starting to get dark here. All right, my mic is good, and I got some supporting links right here. So you can have access to this document. This document is a Google Doc. It's free for everybody to access. And of course, you can always send me a message if you have questions. Come on now, come back on. All right.